Another example in upstate New York of a rural community, well, not so rural, but almost there, somewhat. Megan Costa, she will be presenting for Onondaga County. She is an administrator for special projects with the Syracuse-Onondaga County Planning Agency, managing the Planning Services Division of the agency. The Planning Service Division participates with a variety of local partners to promote effective planning throughout the county on a wide variety of local and regional planning projects, including the current creation of a new sustainability development plan for Onondaga County. Megan sits on a number of local councils and committees committed to planning, sustainability, and community development. She is a native of the city of Syracuse and holds a master's in city and regional planning from Clemson University. Megan Costa.
Hi, I wanted to say thank you for having me here, and I wanted to say how excited I was to be invited to this until I started hearing all the speakers that I have to compete against, so now I'm completely intimidated, so I hope I can compete. But yeah, this is a great conference and a great day. I'm really happy to be here. So I was asked to speak about our county's efforts to improve quality of life and promote good planning and sustainability in Onondaga County. And I'm happy to report that we have a ton of exciting initiatives going on simultaneously throughout Onondaga County that we're really proud of. However, I'm unhappy to report that you're going to have to wait because our Deputy County Executive, Matt Millay, is speaking to you this afternoon, so I'm going to save the really good stuff for him. But just to give you a little primer, we've got a great Save the Rain green infrastructure campaign that's gaining some real national attention. We've working with the EPA, Regional Planning Board, and the City of Syracuse. EPA is coming to Syracuse to do a 2-day charrette next week, actually, with the City of Syracuse, focusing on smart growth and those building blocks programs. We're doing a bunch of energy saving programs. We're actually retaining the stormwater off of our War Memorial Convention Center and actually using that to provide the ice for our ice rink for the Syracuse Crunch, which we think is a real cool project. And we're also aligning our resources and our spending decisions with good planning. And I think Matt Millay is going to talk more this afternoon about the new sales tax sharing agreement in Onondaga County, which has gained a lot of attention, and it should be an interesting discussion this afternoon about that. So what I'm going to talk to you today about is a project that we've been working on for a while, and we're getting ready to really go public with it throughout the community, and that's the county's new Sustainable Development Plan. This plan is being created for the reasons you've been hearing this morning, but basically it's because our settlement patterns and the way we build our communities and places, the way we conduct land use planning is so closely related to many of the decisions that we make in our governments, both large and small, and is so important to achieving our region's goals, not just for the environment, but also for equality, efficiency, progress, and prosperity. So in getting ready to roll out this big planning effort over the next year, which I'll describe at the end of the presentation, I wanted to share with you a presentation on what we've been bringing out to the community and a bunch of different various groups over the past year or so that sort of summarizes the research we've been doing in-house to sort of frame the discussion and figure out what the plan's major themes are going to be in the community. And I think you'll see some parallels to a lot of the speakers we've already heard. So here's a quick snapshot from a county planner's perspective in upstate New York on some of the research we've been doing on development trends and decisions in Onondaga County. And while I'm not really intimately familiar with the greater Binghamton region, I think you'll see a lot of parallels with this region as well. So first and foremost, we've seen a significant continued increase in the number of housing units in the suburban and rural towns in Onondaga County. The map here shows major new subdivisions, which are 5 or more lots being built at a time, marked in red. And then the purple are actually just individual units being built. And this covers about a 10-year period. And as you can see, the development's not just occurring at the edge of our urban fringe, it's really occurring all over the county. Since 2000, almost 7,000 new residential parcels have been created, including 147 major subdivisions covering 2,600 acres. And that was just the red dots. We're also averaging about 160 new rural units outside of the sewer infrastructure each year. And not only are we building more homes and businesses, but everything's also getting bigger. Bigger lots, bigger homes, bigger buildings, bigger roads, bigger parking lots. They're all increasing in size, demanding more land area per unit that's being built. The average size of homes is up for about 40% in the last 20 years, despite decreasing family and decreasing household sizes and the aging baby boomer population. The average lot size for homes being built inside the sanitary district, which is lots that are served by sewers, is almost an acre in size. And the number of rural acres consumed per new housing unit is about 3 times the average for metro areas across the country. We're also seeing new infrastructure to serve these new developments. To our regional water infrastructure between 2001 and 2008. In Onondaga County alone, our major regional water service provider added and acquired 144 miles of new water main, over 1,000 new fire hydrants, 3 new storage facilities, and 2 pumping stations. In that same time, the average cost to customers increased about 95%. The amount of water being delivered by Aqua has decreased by 15%, and the population being served has remained static while the service area has grown. Similarly, the sewer infrastructure within our county is also seeing growth. In 2007 alone, over 57,000 feet of new sewer pipe was installed to serve new development. And since the last county comprehensive plan adopted in 1998, we've added about 12,000 acres to the sanitary district. For those who might not be familiar with the term sanitary district, that area is what's shown in green and purple, and that represents where you can have or expect to have public sewer service provided to your property instead of a private septic system. The areas in purple represent areas that have been added since we had our last county plan adopted in 1998. In those purple areas, there have been no commercial, no industrial, and no multifamily housing built in those areas, solely single family. And we're faced with a massive network of aging water and sewer pipes, strict new federal and state permitting requirements, capacity and overflow issues in our sewer infrastructure, and challenges in serving rural villages and hamlets effectively. We've also expanded our road system, adding about 61 miles of new roads since 2000, all municipally owned roads serving residential streets. The amount of driving we're doing is also increasing. Our collective daily vehicle miles traveled has been increasing steadily each year, and we expect it to continue doing so. And right now it's up 43% since 1990. And our average commute times, while much better than other regions in New York State, are also increasing steadily. Long commutes play a role in climate change, traffic congestion, cost of living, and quality of life, as was mentioned by Matt earlier. So the cumulative effect in these changes in our county is the expansion of what we call the urbanized area, or areas that have changed from a more rural to a built pattern. The urban land in Onondaga County has increased 92% since 1970, and it's increased 50 square miles in the 1990s alone. So we're seeing the gradual suburbanization of towns in Onondaga County year after year. If you look at the map on the bottom, you'll see sort of rings of development occurring. First we saw those close to the city develop, and those are the darker areas. Then with new highway infrastructure, we saw a second ring of towns start to really develop and change, and now we're actually seeing a third ring coming about, and with some new water service that's been extended to some more of our rural towns, we're actually getting ready to add a couple more areas to going from light to dark on that map. So we're seeing development pressures in our rural towns really taking shape right now. But the reality that needs to be considered with all of this perceived growth and activity is that it's accompanied by no real population growth in our region. As a whole, the county population has not seen measurable growth since 1970. While I haven't updated this map, we actually just had the 2010 census numbers come out, which are basically exactly the same as what we were in 1990 as a county. So in the last 40 years, we've actually had a net loss of about 15,000 people in our region. But the dynamics of change within that county are much more dramatic. There's been a major loss of population in the city of Syracuse, losing actually between 1,000 and 2,000 city residents every year for the last 40 years. And if you look at the tables and the numbers here in blue, you can see where they've gone. Town population has gone up 35,000 residents since 1970, and for every new resident, there's been a corresponding increase in both households and housing units. There's actually been more housing units built in our suburban towns than new residents added to the suburban towns. So the growth that we've seen in the suburbs has been supported almost entirely by the major flight of city residents to the edge. And those trends are also starting to be seen in our older villages as well. And the demographic profile of the population that's been leaving the city for the suburbs has left our region with some significant educational, racial, and wealth imbalances, as you can imagine. So these trends and shifts in our development patterns present some really significant challenges in our region. The challenges include a reduction in farmland. The local farm economy is an important economic engine in our county, as well as a real source of pride for our residents. And forest land and open spaces can be a significant factor in mitigating greenhouse gas production. But we've seen a decline in the number of acres and farms, the number of farms, and the number of farm owners in Onondaga County. We've lost permanently 30,000 acres of prime farmland since 1980. And as many of you know, once prime farming soils are converted, you can't get them back. We're also having difficulty supporting transit. We've seen Centro, our local bus provider, struggle to cost-effectively meet the needs of both its urban and suburban customer bases, trying to serve low-density communities in new areas and job sites in new areas, and also create a large enough customer base to justify new routes, while barely being able to sustain current routes. Mass transit requires mass, and we're not building mass. We're unlikely to see improvements to our system or be able to support anything more innovative than a Central bus until we start building our communities with a certain amount of density. It's often said, and this is something that Matt just really focused on, that no matter how many light bulbs we change, no matter how many hybrid cars we put on the road, we really can't significantly reduce our energy usage without changing development patterns overall. We can make buildings as efficient as we need them to be, but if we still have to drive 20 miles to get from here to there, we're sort of missing the larger point. Private vehicles make up over half of our household emissions, and in large part due to the decisions on where and how we live. It's been shown we have a much larger per capita carbon footprint here than in many metro areas across the country. And we're currently locally at the brink of exceeding federal limits for carbon monoxide and ozone emissions in Onondaga County. With the spread of the population, especially families, comes a challenge in the demand for public services in new locations. New and expanding schools, school buses, recreational facilities, fire and police protection, libraries, intersection improvements, streetlights, snow plowing, the list goes on. And at the same time, we have those areas that already exist. So we're seeing empty houses, abandoned commercial centers, underutilized infrastructure, and the closing of public facilities. With no real population growth, every new housing unit in the towns or new store at the edge is roughly equal to a newly vacant house or building somewhere else in our metro area. And as I mentioned already, we're seeing concentrations of poverty in our older communities. While there's many factors that go into the discussions on poverty, we can't forget that our local decision-making and development patterns have had a really significant impact on some of our social and cultural inequalities. While the most dramatic act may have been some of the former mortgage redlining in city neighborhoods, other local conditions and decisions continue to influence housing opportunity, including large lot and exclusionary zoning, federal housing and highway program funding policies, lending practices, and access to transit. Over half of the city's housing stock is renter occupied, while less than 10% of what's being built outside of the city is intended as rental or even affordable single-family housing. And this concentration of poverty has had impacts on the perceived quality of school districts, which obviously affects housing choice for many. And these social inequalities and concentrations of poverty have real impacts on our regional economic competitiveness as well. Quality of place and an educated workforce are the most critical characteristics of places in the United States that are competing well in today's knowledge-based economy. Our workforce is aging, we're not gaining new workers from the outside, so the success of our existing human capital is that much more important to our economic well-being. And in order to bring in new workers and new businesses and industry, we've been told repeatedly that we need to offer quality of place with a vibrant city core, attractive neighborhoods, and access to nature. So place matters. And a particular challenge to local governments, including Onondaga County government, is the spread of our tax dollars over a larger urbanized area. Thousands of new houses and hydrants, hundreds of miles of new water and sewer pipes, dozens of miles of new residential streets on top of what we already have, with no new collective wealth to pay for that. We found that development that exclusively focuses on residential growth in suburban locations rarely actually offsets the new local service demands that it creates. And infrastructure and public services serving low-density developments and communities drives higher per unit costs to provide those services. Yet the way we distribute our resources and control land uses creates competition for new businesses and new residents without effective assessment of net benefit or effect on the whole region as a whole. We're experiencing sprawl without growth, which is very expensive and very unsustainable, not environmentally sustainable, economically sustainable, or socially sustainable. But along with these challenges and all these depressing statistics, we're also seeing some new opportunities as well. We're seeing changing attitudes and practices around all of us as citizens, businesses, and governments, as people really start to rethink the way we live and how each of us contributes to a sustainable future. We're seeing an increased understanding and widespread acceptance on topics like climate change and calls for action from grassroots campaigns all the way up to federal policy. With rising gas and energy prices and our reliance on foreign oil, we're seeing pressures that are really forcing us to look for alternative ways to sustain our way of life and make systemic changes in our way of life. And we're looking into alternative fuels and energy sources. We're looking at taking the bus and in ways we could drive less. We're seeing an obesity epidemic in our country. 59.5% of adults in Onondaga County are considered overweight or obese. And we're seeing study after study linking walkable neighborhoods to more healthy living choices and less sedentary lifestyles than those in auto-dependent communities. We're seeing real progress nationally and locally towards revitalization of our waterways and our open spaces, including through new techniques such as green infrastructure. We're seeing community discussions on the importance of regional thinking and regional planning and intermunicipal planning, and about government modernization techniques to achieve increased efficiency in government spending and reduce competition amongst neighbors. And together, the City, County, and Regional Economic Development Organization in Syracuse, Center State CEO, has identified the revitalization of our infrastructure, curbing urban sprawl, and progressing urban initiatives as critical economic development priorities for Central New York. And we're seeing smart growth principles taking hold throughout our communities and being reinforced in different ways as the federal government pursues urban policy initiatives and creates critical relationships between HUD, DOT, EPA, and hopefully the USDA. A smart growth cabinet and recently adopted smart growth legislation at the state level, and we're also aligning our actions at the county level to be strong and active advocates for smart growth as well. So those are some of the trends, challenges, and opportunities that we've come up with and have been sharing with the community. And those are what we're using to frame what a new plan is going to look like. We also went one step further last year and conducted a public survey as well to really get a gauge for public sentiment on a few key topics related to our planning effort. We did a statistically valid mailed survey to households in Onondaga County last winter, and we were really encouraged by the results, and we thought that was really important because we have this mentality in upstate New York that though the national statistics say one thing, we don't believe that they apply to upstate New York. So I'm happy to say that they do. While the survey did show some of our ingrained tendencies, such as our love for our single occupancy vehicles, it also showed some really promising support for planning and smart growth. It showed support for investing in existing communities and planning and before extending infrastructure into new areas. It really supported farmland and open space preservation, and we were surprised by that because we are a relatively urban county, so that value placed on rural communities was really important to us. It showed support for regional planning, which we weren't sure people would be able to get their arms around, but it really showed through. And it supported really looking into new transportation options for our communities as well. So I think we're on the right track. So now with what we've learned, and now that we've found some money to progress the initiative, we're beginning to embark on rolling out a really public planning process. Right now it's called the County Sustainable Development Plan, but that doesn't exactly roll off your tongue. So we're looking to come up with something a little bit more creative and catchy. I like some of the ideas you came up with this morning. I might steal some of that. So we're in the midst of rebranding sort of the project and the initiative right now. We just hired a consultant team to help us and had our first kickoff meeting. So we really are in the thick of kicking this initiative off. So we're on an aggressive schedule to present some strategies and draft policies by the end of this year. To explain the project, we've broken it down into basically 4 main pieces. Understanding the trends, which is basically what I've been talking about now. Engaging county departments, municipalities, stakeholders, and citizens. Defining sustainable development and creating policies and projects to realize that vision. The first component which picks up on the presentation I gave to you, is really aimed at helping people understand the decisions we make and how they relate to other decisions we make and what the impacts on the community are. We really want people understand how decisions they make, large and small, impact the region. We also want to focus on a really significant shortfall of our last plan, which was engaging the community in this discussion and really having a public discussion about land use and regional planning and those impacts. So we're looking to use some scenario modeling tools, which are really big in planning circles right now. It's a very web-based tool, it's interactive, it helps people understand the impacts of making one decision versus another, it's very graphic. So we're excited to be doing that. We'll also be doing some visioning sessions and trying to get out into the community very directly and specifically to sort of stimulate discussion. So once we engage people and they decide on the future they want, they'll actually be deciding whether they would like to go down path A, B, or C as far as our land development patterns go. We're hoping they pick the sustainable path, and then we will proceed on with defining what that means to achieve that goal. What those policies, what those projects are, defining what that means to be sustainably, to do sustainable development activity, and really getting those actions and policies in place to do that. So that's as far as I can go with it today. Hopefully if I come back again next year, I can tell you what policies we actually came up with, because that's going to be the real bear. But we're thinking big and we're excited about it. So this is our website and our contact information. As I said, we're actually rebranding and we're about to launch the new website. So you can check it now, but check it back in about a month and it'll be a lot better. Thank you.
I think we can all relate to Megan's comments about our opportunities here in the Broome and Tioga regions and our challenges. And today really is a groundbreaking day to really open up the forums for dialogue and discussion about what we can do as agents of change to ensure that our community works towards the principles of smart growth and livability.